Hello and welcome back to another episode of Simskies. Now, I haven't done the podcast for, it's been over 8 months, I think. And I had a lot of fun doing the podcast, but other things came up and I had to put a hiatus on the podcast. Obviously, lots kind of topics to cover and stuff like that. It was supposed to be a podcast that was all about, sharing my knowledge within the flight sim community and tips and tricks of flight simming. Well, I found better ways of doing that versus a podcast. So I'm bringing back the podcast because each episode I want to break down certain categories and discuss the things within that category. So this episode 8, is what we're on officially with the Simskies podcast, is going to be about Flight Sim 2024. And if we are maybe finally on the verge of flipping the switch or turning the page or whatever wave you want to say it, of making Flight Sim 2024 the go-to or the promising go-to simulator when it comes to between 2020 and 2024. Now, if you look at Steam data, the database, clearly based on the numbers that are currently available, well, if you look at that only, you will see that 2020 is dominating flight simming, right? X-Plane and Flight Sim 2024, P3D, etc., right? Flight Sim 2020 is dominating with its average users typically over 2,000 more than Flight Sim 2024. And you gotta remember though, Flight Sim 2024 and 2020 are both available on Game Pass from Microsoft via Xbox and PC. Okay, so Microsoft doesn't really give that information out. So there's a very big chunk of user base we have no idea of how many people are actually using the sim. Which sim between 2020 and 2024? My thought is the following, and it really came down to iFly, honestly. But prior to that was Phoenix. Phoenix released a big Phoenix update not too long ago, and it's a very incredible update. Now, they did make the same update, a lot of the same features available for 2020, but there are a handful of features that are only available in Flight Sim 2024. And, well, this is the big deal, because iFly recently announced that they are working on the Service Pack 1 for the iFly 737 MAX. And in there, they said that will be the final update, from what I understand, the final update for the iFly in 2020. They are going to be focusing future updates, future service updates for Flight Sim 2024. And that's a pretty big deal, because I wonder where their logic came with that. Do they have numbers for Flight Sim 2020 and 2024? How many people are accessing, their site or something? Maybe they can pull that. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just kind of pulling things out of the air at this point. But it does seem like they might understand that 2024 is the future in development when it comes to flight simming. Even though, based on the current numbers we're looking at, 2020 still is the dominant sim between the two of them. And I like this. Not only am I being selfish because I have made the switch over to 2024, period. I made that way back when it launched in November of last year, like several other people have. But there have been a lot of people that have held on to 2020 because, well, several planes not available in 2024. Certain sceneries are better in 2020. Certain add-ons only work in 2020, right? I understand the sim stability. Some people don't like the cloud features of 2024. There are many, many reasons that people have stuck with 2020. And I understand they're all logical reasons. You can do what you want. It's your simming, right? You can certainly use 2020 if you want to, or you can use 2024, or you can use both of them as well, right? They're both really good pieces of software. But when it comes to the future of simming, well, obviously Microsoft and Asobo have said 2024 is the way to go. That's where everything is going to trend towards. But it's been a rough road to get there. We're talking 10 months into, pretty much almost 10 months into Flight Sim 2024, and we're finally getting to that point, especially with Sim Update 3. We're finally getting to the point where we might actually have the vision. We might have that vision of what Asobo and Microsoft actually thought Flight Sim 2024 would be. And there's been those narratives out there saying, they should have just held out and released it in 2025 and named it Flight Sim 2025. I get that. It makes sense. It really does. But I do tend to give a little bit of sympathy to these major changes that some companies have made. And we look at Asobo with Microsoft making these massive changes with the cloud. Okay, that's a very, very big deal. They took an install that was, 60 to 80 gigs or something like that, down to, what is it, 30 now? 30 gigabytes to download and install Flight Sim 2024 because of all the stuff being in the cloud. That's a very, very major change to make. Now, I've noticed this on many of my flights over the past 10 months here, especially when I was in the technical alpha. I remember doing my very first flight in the technical alpha of Flight Sim 2024. And of course, this was only in the US where they had the photogrammetry and all that jazz, right? The US really was the showcase of that technical alpha. And it was missing a bunch of features that eventually made it to launch, right? But the big thing I noticed, and I said, was the performance difference for me was incredible. Just incredible. Going from 2020 to 2024, I saw not only just an FPS improvement, but also the smoothness within the sim, the smoothness of Flight Sim 2024. And that played a big factor in me deciding that, my path going forward was going to be 2024. And realistically, the only reason I kept 2020 installed on my system for so long is because I love the PMGG 737 and the iFly Max. Absolutely love those planes. I love my Boeing planes, right? And really could only fly the Airbus planes in 2024, initially at launch, right? And as time went on, more planes got over to 2024. We saw the CRJ. We recently have seen the E-Jet, quote-unquote, compatible version for 2024. And for the most part, I think every plane now, for the most part, I think every plane is now available in 2024, minus a handful of questionable ones that kind of work but don't kind of work. We're still waiting on PMG to bring the 737 over. And I think, what's that one called? The guys making the MD-11, right? I think they're still holding out on a couple things as well. But we're seeing planes come over to 2024 faster. We're seeing more scenery that's been fully, maybe not fully converted, but have been optimized for 2024. I don't like that word. The one we have for Atlanta, I don't like they use the word optimized for 2024 because there are still some pretty big issues I have with that scenery, and I've mentioned it before, which is the grass in 2024 is really, really cool, but it's missing that in that scenery for 2024. But there have been a lot of strides with 2024. So I do think that Flight Sim 2024 is finally being accepted by developers. And it could be for the fact that maybe they're starting to see less people use 2020 and more people using 2024, so they want to bring it over. Or maybe the developers are getting noise from Microsoft and Asobo saying, hey, let's start working on the sim because this is the future when it comes to flight simming. The marketplace promises a lot. One of the big things with the marketplace in 2024 is the ability to rent an aircraft, try it out, right? That's incredible because there are so many different planes out there that have all kinds of different developers working on them, right? And some of them are low quality, some are high quality, and it's great to be able to test those planes out for a flight or two and say, yeah, I'm going to buy that plane because it's really, really cool. Now, of course, those will only be in the marketplace. And then eventually we'll see the career mode. We'll get more third-party planes as well, which will hopefully make that career mode a little bit better as well. So let me know your thoughts. Do you feel that 2024 is finally kind of making that switch over to being the dominant sim between 2020 or 2024? And then are you currently in 2020 and haven't made that switch over to 2024? Why is that? Why is it? And if you are in 2024 and made the switch over to 2020, when did you and why did you? Thanks for watching this episode of Simskies. We'll have some more down the road. Hopefully we'll bring some guests into the episodes as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.